food aspect of it, but not so much in terms of maybe coffee till a certain extent. But this is also very restricted to the upper middle class who are aware of it. And since most of India's population does not fall under that category, so I would say most of India is not really aware of what fair trade is.
Saatchi, do you think the upper middle class should be made aware of fair trade and the certifications?
Definitely. I think it's very important because yeah, they are the people who have the spending power to basically purchase something that is even slightly more expensive, and they are the people who can actually go out and do this because they also are educated enough to understand what it means. So if maybe it starts off with them, and then there can be a trickle down effect to them educating others about it. That's how it works, because I don't think, very honestly speaking, I don't think the Indian middle class would care, or even once they know about what fair trade is, because simply because they don't have the energy or sometimes the purchasing power to go and purchase those goods.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think how do you think fair trade could spread out in India?
I mean, so there are two approaches I would say to this. One is, of course, um, you need to make the consumers aware, the people who are buying it actually aware, because even if the manufacturers do agree and become fair trade compliant, if they don't, very honestly, if they don't see a business case for it, if they don't see a demand for consumers from it, then to a certain extent, it's going to be something that they're only doing for the sake of doing. So I think it's important, first of all, to make the consumers aware, and especially Gen Z, because Gen Z is the generation that's most aware of climate issues, all sorts of other socio-economic issues like the Black Lives Matter movement, all of those movements that weren't necessarily that relevant to Indians, I would say, but people were still aware of all of those issues that were happening worldwide over here. So I think maybe starting it from a place where students, like really young students who are in primary or secondary schools, maybe fifth or sixth graders, or sixth or seventh graders actually, rather, making them aware of what it is. It's as simple as ingraining it in them from a very young age, because in India, in our school curriculums, we barely have anything related to social sciences or civic responsibility or environmental sciences. Like it's a very whatever is included in the curriculum is something that's only done as a formality, or just doing it for the sake of doing it. There is no active effort that's put into it. So students and children grow up not knowing and hence not caring about these issues. So I think it's very important to target them when they're young, so they understand this, first of all. And secondly, from a manufacturer perspective, I think, like I said in my last meeting also, I think most of the manufacturers, and I only speak about garment manufacturers and the fashion industry here, are pretty compliant with fair trade rules. I think just having a guide or that can help them, get started on the path, or having a person who acts as a consultant for them to become fair trade compliant and can guide them that, okay, you need to improve in this area. This is what that needs to be done. Because I think they also don't have the time to actually understand and research about it on their own and then implement it. If there was somebody who could just directly come do a basic evaluation of the unit, which I think is a part of fair trade, I'm not sure, and just then tell them that, okay, you need to change A, B, and C, then that's another way to go about it. So, yeah.
I would like to ask also Ria and Yasmin, since you both are US students from the US, how is it in your country? Are people also aware about fair trade, or is it something similar like in India?
I think that people aren't really aware of what fair trade is, but I think they're aware of the negative effects of fast fashion they just don't know the initiatives that have been taken to prevent fast fashion. Because I know that a lot of my friends from like different areas and stuff know what fast fashion is and know the negative effects.
Mm-hmm. Ria, do you have something to add to this?
Yasmin, because even when I started this project, I was aware of the more so of the negative effects of fast fashion compared to I guess what fair trade initiatives were. So I do think that more people are aware of the effects of fast fashion, especially of how that relates to where they shop and where they get their clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is it yeah, it's her internet. I think.
Okay, where's Ria? Ria's gone?
Yeah, I think she'll join
I'm
back.
back now.
Yeah.
I just got kicked out. I'm not really sure. But yeah, what I was just saying that was of where people shop. I think they know if they are buying I guess companies that do support those movements, that they would be aware of that, but they're not really sure of what fair trade is as a whole.
Mm-hmm. So it means that in your schools, when you were in the 5th or the 6th grade, nothing about fair trade or about civic responsibility in that sense was taught to you. Am I right, Ria?
I think that's correct. I'd say that we're not really taught anything about fair trade or fast fashion in school, and most of the information we get is gathered from kind of looking on our own and trying to be more ethical with where we shop. But nothing's really taught in the education system.
Now, to be fair, I'll ask Sarah too. How is it in Germany?
In Germany, it's very similar to the US. So we're also not getting taught. So we are getting taught a bit about fair trade, but especially regarding fast fashion or the fashion industry, I would say that all I know about it is mostly from this project or things that I looked up for myself. And yeah, I think it needs a lot of more. It needs a lot more awareness.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so go ahead with the next question. I don't know who wanted to ask. I'm sorry. I just wanted to add this part of it just to understand how it is in different continents, to what Saatchi said. Okay, please.
All right. So how has the fast fashion trend developed over time?
So it started off with I think Zara and H&M were the pioneers for the fast fashion movement and the business model. And it's the number of seasons. So fast fashion is basically just having producing a lot and having more seasons than fashion generally has. So the seasons in fashion started off with the need for actual different types of clothing in different seasons. Not so much in, I would say, different parts of Asia, but I think in the West, it's required because the temperatures do vary greatly. Like in between your summer and your winter, you do require different types of clothing in those areas. So that's how it started. But all of these brands, they started creating garments or collections on a monthly basis. So, I mean, that was the origin of fast fashion. And then slowly, because a lot of other brands saw that it was very lucrative financially to actually go for a model like this, because because the consumers were also being happy that they were getting such a different product variety. They were able to, just shop whenever they wanted to, and all of that they could, it exponentially grew. Like even localized brands, for example, there might be a brand that might be really big in either Germany or the US, which is not that big internationally, but it has a lot of chains, it has a lot of stores across, across the US or Germany. So those kinds of brands started adopting that model, not completely, but till a certain extent. They may not have as many seasons as, let's say, a Zara or an H&M, but they do have more seasons than what's required. So it's slowly picking up pace. But I think it's reached a point now where it's not growing anymore. It's still at a standstill. Like, of course, like the companies that are practicing it, sorry, are still practicing it, but I don't see any more adopting that model, I would say, because most of them have already adopted it.
Okay. How does fast fashion affect the lives of teenagers and other consumers?
I think for teenagers, this is from what I've observed, I think they're actually really happy with fast fashion because of the whole social media generation, where people are constantly on social media, they're making different types of content like reels, blah blah blah. It's considered, I think, cool to be, have to have, and it's not wrong on their part. Like, everybody, it's just something that's stylish right now, so people could do it. But I don't think it's having a direct negative impact on the lives of teenagers as such. I don't think it has a direct negative impact on any consumer's life. It only has a negative impact on the life of the people who are working in the industry, and that too just the most bottom tier, not even the managerial positions, because it is very financially lucrative. People can make a lot of money off of it. So I think that's why the change is so slow, to be honest, because as long as people as long as it's not happening to them, people tend not to care about what's going on. So yeah, but I do believe till a certain extent it is encouraging a sort of like, this is very psychological, but encouraging a sort of shallow perspective in terms of teenagers, because they tend to now judge, and like, teenagers are already like that. They always judge by their looks. It's always a first glance kind of thing, but it's becoming even more so where they're really obsessed with the way they look, with the way they present themselves, and sometimes it can be harmful, it can be negative, in because they are not really being true to themselves, I do believe, in certain cases.
Saatchi, I also think there's another aspect to this for people who cannot afford this and they're in the schools. They could be mobbed, or,
I agree.
I wonder what happens to you in your schools.
Yeah, I think the class distinction in Indian schools is so obvious. Like nobody who's not from a similar socioeconomic class attends the same school. It's mostly people who are in the same class who attend one school, and then there's a separate. So in India we have the concept of I think it's there also, where you have private schools and you have government schools, basically. And the Indian government schools are obviously, they're cheaper in terms of providing education. So a lot of the people who, but they also don't provide quality education. So a lot of the people who go to these schools are people who come from really poor backgrounds, like very financially poor backgrounds. So I think that does, like, and in India, even the whole the bullying and all of those negative aspects that generally come into schools is very less, like, speaking solely about India itself. But yeah, the idea, what Shilpa auntie said is correct, that it does, obviously, for the people who can't afford it, it's an aspirational goal for them to be able to afford those kinds of clothing. So yeah.
What happens to the surplus of clothing produced for fast fashion in India?
So most of it ends up in landfill or is incinerated. So because it's because the thing is, it's very expensive for them to actually stock these garments. Inventory takes up a lot of money. It's very expensive to actually store them. So for them, the easier solution is to basically just ship them out to a landfill, or like dump them in a landfill or burn them. And that's not just the case in India, it's throughout. In India, it's a little better because we have a lot of markets on the street where all of these garments generally end up. So how street markets work is that they buy from all of these places where there's a surplus and nobody wants those items anymore, and then they land up on the street. So it's still a little better, because Indians as a culture are used to not throwing away things. They are used to using them till the very end. But Mostly it's either landfill or incineration. Mhm.
Do you know where the biggest landfill in India is?
I think it's in Delhi. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure.
Okay. So burning of these clothes creates also environmental problems, right?
Yes, really bad environmental problems. Like, and even so, that's why a lot of recycling technologies are coming into play, and a lot of you should look up this foundation called the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. They were the pioneers of circular economy, and what the concept of circular economy is basically just at the end of a product's life cycle for it to come back into the stream again, for it to be reused. So there are a lot of like sustainability and ethics are very varied. There is no one way to approach it. Like you can't it's very case dependent. Now for example, if let's say you need to buy a coat, you need to buy a winter coat, and you you can't find it anywhere else, like a good winter coat which is also affordable. You can't find it anywhere else except for a fast fashion brand. You If you purchase from that, that's not a bad purchase, because the duration of when you use a coat is very long. You don't throw away a coat in 2 months. You probably use it for like 5 to 6 years till you outgrow it, sometimes even longer, to be honest. So all of those things are fine. Sustainability is basically trying to use something for as long as you can and not making impulse purchases. So yeah, I also looked up the biggest landfill. It's actually in Mumbai. It's Deonar. It's right here. It's wow, I was not aware of that. It's 30 minutes from my house. Yeah.
Really? Maybe I
Yes.
should go. You unfortunately you're leaving, but otherwise I would have loved to go with you to have a look at it. But I'll
It's
try.
horrible. It's horrible. Like I've been close to it. I've not been near it, but you can smell it from, I think, 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers away. It's terrible. The stench is terrible, and there are no waste management systems in India, so it just piles up. It's there is no way there's no segregation. There is no proper disposal. There are smaller companies that are coming in, but there are no and there are also obvious certain government initiatives that are coming into play, but it's at a very nascent stage right now. It's terrible.
Thanks.
Yeah. I'm sorry if I veered off the question a little bit. Please let me know if you're not getting the answer you want. I'll try to answer it in the best way I can.
Saatchi, you are incredible with so much information, and we're really grateful. And I don't think you veer off, far away. It all mounts up to the same thing. I mean, the landfills over here may have stench, but there are. I don't know if you know about the landfill. No, it's not a landfill. In Chile, in the Atacama Desert,
Yeah.
there's a big, huge mountain. It's just a mountain of clothes.
Yeah.
I have this thing in German. I'll send you the link, girls, and you can have a look at it. And so everywhere it's the same problem, Saatchi, could you do a favor? Could you write down the name of the foundation that you mentioned about the circular economy in the chat so that we could look it up later?
Yeah.
Thanks.
No problem. Yeah, but yeah, the especially the landfill in Chile, the one that you mentioned, it's slowly coming to light because it's the worst textile waste mound. Like all of the other landfills, they still have, obviously it's garbage from everywhere, but that one is specific to textile waste. And so you must have heard of these programs where clothing drives or donations to basically poorer countries in Africa. All of those, come donate your old clothes, we'll go give them, all of those. The thing is, there are no systems in place for those kinds of people, and now those people also don't require the clothing. they manage to get clothing at a price that's affordable to them. So it's those kinds of systems are really ridiculous. Even for example, H&M also has the system where, you know, you bring back your clothes, we'll recycle them, we'll give you a discount, all of that. They're not recycling all their clothes, they're directing them to a landfill. So I mean, what are you, so they just at one time they're going to pile up, and then it's going to come into the limelight because you can't really hide it till after a certain extent. So yeah.
Saatchi, I don't know if you know, but in Germany, we have these boxes where you go and you put the clothes into the box, and then it's collected by some organization, and then it just goes, as you said, to some countries where it is sold, or it's given free of charge, whatever it is. You can even put in your shoes, and sometimes it's completely full and it's just being piled down and it looks really awful, but most of the time they come and collect it. And no one, and everybody, each one of us thinks we're doing a good job by putting the clothes there, so somewhere it goes. But just to be aware that that's not the case. And maybe we should put our clothes in the second-hand shop, so some other people could use it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I would say whenever you want to dispose of something, the best is to not go through somebody who disposes it off for you. Just go do it directly if it's possible. Like for example, in India, we have tons of charities, tons of NGOs, right? So what we generally do is, sorry, that's my dog. Just give me 1 minute. I'll be back just a minute.
I just wanted to ask you girls if you would like to ask some other questions. I am interrupting you and asking some questions, but if you have some other questions which are not written on the list, just go ahead and ask, okay?
Okay.
Hi, yes, sorry, I'm back. Yeah, I would say that directed donations are the best. Like if you can directly go and sell it or donate it, that is what you should do. I would also suggest researching up on waste collection agencies. There are certain waste collection agencies that, for example, like what I do in my home is I collect all the plastic bottles that come into play for, you know, when you're using kitchen products. For example, my daily milk is delivered in a plastic bottle, so I need to make sure that it's disposed of properly. So I collect all of these, and I know an agency in my city that actually collects all of these, and it actually goes for recycling. I've done my research, I've done my due diligence on that. So I would suggest that, I know it's additional work and you have to put in your effort towards it, but I would recommend doing that, because then you know for sure that what you're doing is good. And then you can also help people around you. You can help your friends who might want to do good but might not have the time or the inclination to actually go and do their research, and you can basically be a human directory for them. But yeah.
Saatchi, I don't know if you know, sorry, if you know about, and I don't know if this is available in the States, but in Germany, we have this, it's kind of a flea market where you can buy clothes, but you buy clothes per kilo. So you pay 20 euros for this kilo of clothes, or 30 euros for a little bit more. So does that concept, is it available in India?
No.
Okay, What about in the US? Have you, Ria and Yasmin?
I do know of some shops where you can buy clothes by the pound.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So Ria, you were going to ask the next question.
Yes, but I also wanted to say I haven't been to one of those shops that sell per like weightage, like per pound. Like I have not been to that. Yasmin, have you? In the US?
Yeah, I have been. There's a system that Goodwill does, which usually Goodwill is just a normal thrift store, but they have some stores called Goodwill bins where all the clothes are just like laid out in piles and you can take as much as you want. You just have to purchase by the pound. So like a pound could be like $5 or something.
I think, I mean, I've read about Goodwill, and Goodwill is mostly for the people who can't afford new clothes, right? That's the aim of Goodwill. It works as a non-governmental organization. I'm not
Yes.
sure.
That's a question for you, to you.
Yeah, it's not a government organization. It's a nonprofit, I believe, and it's mostly for low income families, but it's also good for regular consumers because like when like purchasing from like new clothes from new stores, it's not as good for the environment as repurposing old clothing items. And obviously there's like a surplus of clothing right now, so
Yeah.
it's better not to consume too much.
Interesting. I wasn't aware of that. Thank you.
So continuing on, why haven't governments taken steps to curtail fast fashion if it is such an environmental problem?
Okay. Because a lot of governments, their economy comes from the textile and apparel industry, especially South Asian governments. India, out of India's total economy, I think 4%. I'm not sure. You're going to have to check the statistic, but I think 4% is comes from the textile and apparel factories and the industry over here. Bangladesh, it's a much higher percentage. That almost their whole economy runs on the textile industry. Same for Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Vietnam. A lot of the other developed countries where manufacturing takes, China, a lot of countries where manufacturing takes place. And very honestly, in those countries, their primary goal is to provide employment and a livable source of income to their people. And that's the whole, that's actually a discussion that's very interesting because a lot of people expect the onus of taking these steps to be on these governments, but these governments have far more pressing problems. Like, you can't care about the environment when somebody does not have the money to feed their family. It's a give or take between the lives of people and the environment. Like, I know people who, imagine living on a salary worth what, 20,000 INR per month, which is how much? Sorry, my math is really bad, so I'm going to have to calculate. That's yeah, that's 2,40,000. Yep, yeah, that's 2,40,000. Isn't that? Yeah, that's 2,40,000 INR per year, which is, I don't know what the euro or the US equivalent of it is. I would appreciate if somebody could convert it and let me know. But it's basically, it's not the minimum wage that it is in Europe or US, and it's still a comfortable amount for somebody to live in India. I know plenty of people who survive on that amount with a family of three, like the husband, the wife, and the child. So there, it's not the best, of course, but it makes do. That's the point of it. So like I was saying, in those governments, it's so important for them to take care of their people. The environment comes second, which is totally understandable. But for the governments where that's not a concern anymore, especially European governments, it's really coming into play very slowly. Not very slowly. They're taking active steps. For example, the Denmark government, the Finland government, Germany till a certain extent, Netherlands, very, very focused on environmental sustainability. And who else? I would say it's mostly the Nordic countries in Europe, Sweden, all of those countries, because they can afford to do that. Like the people there don't need to worry about it so much. Obviously, there is a certain amount of poverty that exists, but it's not their pressing concern. In the US, I honestly have no idea why the government does not take any steps. I think it's solely because the consumerism is so rampant in the United States. It's more than any other country in in the world till a certain extent. Like you go into a grocery store, you go into a mart over there, you would see like 10 different options for every single thing, which isn't really the case in, I think, most countries. Like we do have options, but it's not. And I'm seeing that sometimes there are like really unnecessary options. Like you don't. I've been, like, my grandmother lives in New York, and I visited her a couple of times, and I'd always go. Initially, I was very excited going to the marts and the groceries over there because it was dazzling, very honestly. And then after that, once I grew up a little, I was like, yeah, who needs that? Who needs a, I don't know, sriracha flavored turkey? It's just why do you need that? Why do you consume that? So why do you produce it? It's as simple as that. So, and there are links that consumerism started in the US and then it spread to various other countries. So I think that's just something that the government is just so focused on making profits, they don't really want to consider the environmental cost.
All right. So, what steps can we take as individuals to counteract the fast fashion trends?
That's a good one, actually. First of all, you can be aware of your consumption patterns. Like, how often do you shop? What do you shop for? When you shop, um, do you do you shop out of need or do you shop out of want? Like, and even if you shop out of want, that's not a bad thing. But you should control it. If you're shopping every month and saying, oh yeah, I absolutely need this new top, that's not a need, that's a want. That's one. Differentiating between those two things is very important. Secondly, try understanding what fabrics and what materials are better for the environment. What are the certifications that are linked? Like, for example, if you go into certain brands, they may say, okay, this is like, this denim is it's made from kinder chemicals. Now, what does that mean? What is this vague terminology that brands associate? Because a lot of brands just say, like, for example, I know that Zara recently, they came out with this campaign called Join Life campaign, and it's supposed to have some recycled content and all of that, blah blah blah. Like, it's and most commonly the language that you'll see with these brands is, it's good for the environment, good for the people, conscious, responsible, blah 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 blah. But do your research. Are these brands providing any data as to why is it eco-friendly, why is it responsible? Because it is that's basically just marketing that's playing on people's emotions. People want to do the right thing, but they don't want to put the effort into doing the right thing. So, for example, you go into a shop, you see something that says, oh, this is 53% recycled polyester, you'll feel good about buying it. But is recycled polyester better than actually going for something that's 100% cotton? Do your research, understand that, understand what kind of fabric, especially for your generation, understand what kinds of fabrics, what kinds of materials are better for the environment, because there are certain, and a lot of times they're produced at the same price that that you buy other garments for. That's one thing. Obviously, avoid the obvious don'ts like polyester, viscose. All viscose is still fine, but polyester, unless you absolutely need it, please avoid it. It's really bad for the environment with the microplastics. It's absolutely horrible. So there is that. And thirdly, I try shopping secondhand, of course. Try swapping. There are so many renting platforms that exist. Like, for example, if you need a dress for an occasion like prom, where you know that you're not really going to wear the dress ever again. I don't know if that's the case, but I'm assuming that's the case. Or if there's an occasion where you're not going to wear that outfit again, then try renting it, because it's easier on your pocket too. So that's one more way of being sustainable. and avoiding fast fashion. And lastly, just making everybody around you aware that, like, don't shame people. That's the worst thing you can do. Like, if your friend shops from H&M, don't shame her by saying, oh, why are you shopping from H&M? Why are you not shopping from a thrift store or something like that? You never know. That might be the only place that's affordable for her, and honestly, till a certain extent, convenient for her. But try to make them aware, because that's honestly the best you can do. So, yeah.
Thank you. And how do you think can we spread in general awareness about the negative effects of fast fashion?
Social media. I use my Instagram. I regularly post stories on my Instagram about this, and I've had some surprising conversations that have come out of it, very honestly. Like, people who I did not expect to care about it at all have responded to me, and they've said, okay, where can I shop a better alternative? Because they just don't know. They want to, but they just don't know. And so, your social media, then also conversations with your friends. And this is something that actually might end up bothering you, because people close, this is something I've observed in my personal life, people closest to you will be the most resistant to change, because they'll take it personally. When you tell your best friend that, okay, yeah, this is not really right, this is not really the responsible thing to do. I personally had an argument with my best friend like a few days ago, where I just told her that, okay, buying things, and like she was like, okay, yeah, I've bought like 10 things off of this e-commerce website. I'll return them if they don't fit me well, or if I don't like them too much. And she didn't really know that the whole process of returning a garment is also very harmful to the environment, and most often it doesn't get resold. So it's not really the wise thing to do. And I was just trying to explain that to her, and she was like, yeah, of course I'm not going to buy something that I obviously don't like at all. And she took it personally, and she got a little defensive. So have try to understand how you can navigate those conversations, because you don't mean any harm, but they see it as something that's wrong on their part, and honestly nobody likes listening uh, to their mistakes. So try to understand how you can navigate those conversations. And I think just speak, like, using social media, speaking about it in your personal circles is more than enough. And obviously keeping yourself updated about it as much as you can. um, with Ever since I've started working, I've felt like I've not had the time to be updated with these news. I can't read reports as much as I'd like to. So what I've done is, now I just keep aside some time every month or every week for myself, and I decide, okay, I'm going to just read in these 2 hours. I'm going to understand what's going on. And like, for example, recently we had the COP26 summit that I think you all must be aware of, the biggest environmental summit. It was the biggest environmental conference in the world, where all of the big players showed up. And there were a lot of, like, the Prime Minister of India was there, the Prime Minister of the UK, all the various presidents, all of those were present. So anybody who has the power to make a change was present at that conference. So it was very important, and I really wanted to read what came out of it, and I couldn't, and I was so upset with myself because I just didn't get the time to do it. So yeah, I think just scheduling and keeping yourself up to date is also something that's really important. And yeah, don't feel guilt, because I feel like this is something you all might relate to, climate anxiety. I suffer from it. I constantly feel like, it's not a constant feeling, but it's sometimes it's like, oh my god, what is going to happen? My city is going to be underwater by the time it's 2050. What am I doing? There's nothing happening, the change is not fast enough. So trying to calm yourself down and understanding when to take a break is also very important. Like, you want to do good, but the good can't come at the expense of you burning out. So remember that.
Yes, we will definitely keep that in mind, and we'll definitely stay updated as well with climate change as well as fast fashion effects. So thank you so much. That's all the questions we have, and we appreciate the time you have taken.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm really glad to talk to all of you.
Saatchi, thank you very, very much. I really think today's interview, I must admit that we didn't miss Sapan today. So, but we still want to interview him. So,
Yeah.
but we learned a lot, and I think you gave us some tips which are really easy to put into practice. and sharing your personal experiences with your friends and something, it makes it so much easier when you give examples, because I think we usually, you know, when you are into the spirit of, you know, change and everything, and then you don't mean it, but it just comes out and you shame others or you embarrass others, and you all that you're trying to do is to change. And but you're right, the first thing is be the change, as Gandhi has said.
Yeah.
And at the same time create awareness. So I think you have become an ambassador for us to become the change. And I think we are all inspired, even though I'm not in I'm not a pupil, but I'm a student in life. So we are very, very grateful to you for taking the time. And maybe we have some more questions, and I'm sure you'll be available to answer that, our
Yeah,
queries.
no problem. I can even put in my email here. If any of you ever want to reach out to me, just shoot me a mail. I'm pretty fast with my replies on my email, so you can just talk to me whenever you'd like to. And I think most of you might be active on Instagram and all of those, all of the social media websites. So I'm just going to put down a couple of pages you can follow, which post really fun content, and they're nice infographics, and like they really teach you a lot. Like I learn everything from mostly those pages. I'm also obsessed with social media, so um
That's great. That's what I wanted to ask you, if you could share it with us, and if you could even send it to me on WhatsApp, then I'll put it in the group. Yeah.
mhm.
And another thing, we would all love to be your followers. I hope I'm talking for all of them.
I don't post that much also about it. It's a lot of it's a lot of stuff about my life too. But yeah, you're welcome. You can unfollow whenever it gets boring. It's fine. I won't mind. But yeah.
Okay. Fine. And if you see any subject or anything that would be interesting for us, please feel free to share so that we can learn and we can spread them to the
Definitely.
others too.
Yeah.
Oh, Saatchi, thanks a lot. I really appreciate. I'm
No.
so happy that we managed to. I haven't seen you personally, but we managed to do this
Yeah.
really good interview, and hope to see you before you fly.
I don't know if that's going through anymore, considering the situation in the Netherlands, and Germany especially. I hope you're keeping safe, Sarah, because I've heard about it worsening. Yeah.
You mean you may not fly down?
I don't think so, because the cases are just rapidly increasing in Europe, and I'm terrified to be stuck there and not be able to fly back. So I mean, it's still a decision to be taken. I fly in a week, so I'll know more throughout the next week, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll cross our fingers and hope you make the best decision. But you know, there's no wrong decision. There's always a right decision at the right time.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, everyone. See you.
Thank you too. It was awesome.
I'm glad.
Thank you.
I think Peter can stop the recording now.
Yes, that's
Should
what
I?
I'm. Yeah. Yeah. Could you?
Okay.
I just wrote to him. Okay. Let's see if the recording is still on. Maybe I can write to him on WhatsApp too. Okay, anyway, we can cut this off, this last part of the